Now we want to bring in a guest to talk about BP's latest discovery in the Gulf of Mexico. It is, of course, the biggest U.S. oil find in 3 years. You've probably heard that now, but we want to look broader at the industry to see how the new type of drilling in deep water is going to change the industry. And Brian Youngberg is an energy analyst at Edward Jones. He does have a buy rating on BP. Brian joins us there from St. Louis with his outlook. Great to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me, Lori.
So characterize the drilling industry right now. Was this a huge surprise with BP, and what does it say now about the deep water industry?
Well, I think it is a big surprise. I mean, we've had several great finds the last few years in the deep water, most notably Brazil, as well as the Gulf of Mexico. And I think what this does is just really bodes well for the longer-term future for oil production. You know, the days of poking holes in West Texas and finding oil easily are long gone. And so we're having to go to, you know, the farther reaches of the world and the depths of the oceans to find oil. And the new technology is really helping that move forward.
What is the new technology that's allowing BP and other companies to drill so deep? 2 miles in, that's how deep this latest find was, correct?
It's going to be 7 miles down from the surface of the ocean, which is pretty remarkable if you think about it. You know, I think there's several things, you know, that you can talk about, but you know, the seismic work that they can do nowadays compared to even 5 or 10 years ago is pretty remarkable. You know, they're going much deeper in some areas below sub-salt levels, as they call them, where they used to not be able to see through those at all. And they can identify potential reserves much easier than they could a few years ago. And on top of that, the technology to actually drill for the oil has improved. If you think about it, you're drilling through enormous depths of water that is very cold, and then you're boring into the earth and rock that can be very hot. So you have to have equipment that can sustain great temperature differences, and the technologies have improved enough the last few years to make that possible, and I think they'll continue to improve going forward.
Is BP a leader in this new wave of technology in oil drilling?
Well, BP is definitely a leader in the Gulf of Mexico. They have the largest reserves out there. They've had a couple great finds here lately. I would keep in mind that, you know, these are just finds right now. They think there's oil down there. They have to do a lot more appraisal work, and actual production is several years away. But BP is one of the leaders in this area, and I would also note one of their partners in this particular find that was identified yesterday is Petrobras, which is a Brazilian oil company that many people are familiar with, that has really focused on, obviously, the offshore opportunities they have in Brazil itself.
So these new discoveries, obviously a couple years away, right, from hitting the market. But, I mean, are we looking at an era where we're going to see a renewed flooding of inventory? I mean, could it really drive prices down in the next couple of years?
I think in the next couple of years, it's really going to be the demand from the economy rebounding that's going to be driving prices, as well as supply. What does OPEC do? What does supply do from the non-OPEC countries, which has been declining for the last few years? So I think it's really a supply and demand from that standpoint in the next couple of years. In the longer term, this does obviously bode well for supply. I would say, you know, production from these wells that they're talking about today, that they announced yesterday, for example, is probably at least, you know, probably 7 or 8 years away. But what it does for BP in general, from an investor standpoint, is it bodes well as far as confidence that they can grow production over time. And that's the biggest question the big oil companies really face, because most of them have suffered from actually declining volumes. And BP's done a very good job the last year or two, and they have aggressive goals out through 2020, and this helps support that. So it really instills a lot of confidence in what they can do.
Interesting perspective on the oil services industry. Brian Youngberg, thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you.